hardest thing I've ever had to do was point a loaded shotgun at my best friend. He was just watching me, his head tilted in that familiar, curious way that had always melted my heart. But there was one thing wrong, one terrible, impossible, soul-shattering thing. He was smiling, not a dog smile, with his tongue lolling out. This was a wide, knowing, human smile that stretched his lips unnaturally. And as I stood there shaking, that smiling mouth opened in a perfect imitation of my own voice. It spoke a single word. Hello, Mark. My world shattered, and it had all started just 1 week before, when I came home thinking I was the luckiest man in the world. The real Buster was my shadow, my confidant, my chaotic ball of pure joy. His greetings were legendary, a storm of barking and frantic tail wagging that could be heard from the street. So when I returned from a short weekend trip to absolute silence, a cold knot of dread formed in my stomach. I threw the door open, expecting the worst. But there he was, sitting calmly in the hallway. The relief was so intense, it almost brought me to my knees. Hey, buddy, you had me worried. I laughed, dropping my bags to scratch him behind the ears. But the silence was the first piece of a puzzle I never wanted to solve. The next piece was his food bowl. The real Buster ate like a hurricane. This dog ate with a quiet, machine-like precision, not spilling a single crumb. Then there was the mailman, Buster's sworn enemy, who was now completely ignored. The dog would just watch the letters fall to the floor. With a calm, analytical stillness, I tried to deny it. I tried to tell myself he was just tired, or maybe mad at me for leaving. But the feeling of wrongness grew with each passing hour. He wouldn't play with his favorite torn-up tennis ball. He would just watch it bounce, his eyes dark and empty. He started sitting in the darkest corner of my room at night, a motionless silhouette. He wasn't sleeping, he was observing. The breaking point, the moment my denial shattered into a million pieces, came on Wednesday night. I walked into my bedroom and a metallic, coppery smell hit me. I turned on the light. There, placed perfectly in the center of my white pillow, was a dead bird. Its neck was broken, but there was no blood, no sign of a struggle. It was a pristine, horrible trophy. I turned to look at the dog, who was standing in the doorway watching me, waiting for my reaction. There was no pride in his eyes, no guilt. There was only a cold, alien intelligence. It was the look of a scientist observing a lab rat. And in that moment, I knew, with chilling certainty, the creature living in my house had already killed my best friend, and it was just getting started with me. Paralyzing fear gave way to a cold, burning rage. This thing, this imposter, was not just an animal. It was a murderer, and I was living in a cage with it. The next night, I was startled awake by a familiar sound. A frantic, desperate whining coming from the backyard. It was Buster's voice. My blood ran cold. The creature was supposed to be in the corner of my room, but the silhouette was gone. I crept to the window overlooking the yard, my heart hammering against my ribs, and I saw him, the real Buster. My Buster. He was muddy, skinny, and terrified, clawing at the back door, crying for me. He was alive. Before I could even process the relief, a shadow moved on the porch below. The imposter. It moved with an unnatural silence, a predator stalking its prey. Before my real dog could even turn around, the creature lunged. There was no growl, no struggle, just a swift, silent, horribly efficient movement. The whining stopped. The creature stood over my dog's body, and then a horrifying transformation began. Its form seemed to shimmer, to blur at the edges. It was like it was absorbing him, learning, perfecting its disguise. After a moment, it looked exactly as it had before. It turned its head and looked directly up at my window, directly at me. It knew I had seen everything. I spent the next day locked in my room, my mind racing. I wasn't dealing with a ghost. This was a physical being, a biological entity. I scoured the deepest corners of the internet, my fingers shaking as I typed every combination of imposter animal, creature that copies, and my dog was replaced. I found it, a 10-year-old post on an obscure folklore forum. The user called it a mimic. The post described everything: the uncanny valley perfection, the silent observation, the lack of emotion. They were rare hunters that didn't just kill, they replaced. They studied their target's life to get close to the real prize, the human. Then I saw the sentence that changed everything. The mimic is tied to its first kill in a new territory. The post read, "It keeps a trophy, an anchor, something that belonged to the one it replaced. Find the anchor, and you can break its connection. Destroy it, and you might destroy the mimic itself." Buster's collar, the real one. The worn leather collar with the little silver name tag. Suddenly, I heard a sound from downstairs that made my soul freeze. A soft, feminine voice, perfectly mimicking my deceased mother. "Mark, honey, are you there?" It was listening to old home videos. It was learning. It knew I was its final target. The hunt was on. But I wasn't hunting the monster. I was hunting for the last piece of my friend. I went to the attic and unlocked my grandfather's old shotgun case. It was time to take my home back. Armed with the shotgun, I began a tense search of the house. The creature, back in its perfect Buster disguise, followed me from room to room. It didn't threaten me. It just watched, its head tilted, a silent observer in a deadly game of hide and seek. It knew what I was looking for, and it seemed amused. I checked the dog bed, under the couch, in my closet. Nothing. I was getting desperate. Then I remembered the bird on my pillow, so perfectly preserved, so cold. The monster was a predator, and predators often store their kills somewhere cold. The kitchen. I walked to the refrigerator, my heart pounding. The creature stopped at the doorway, its tail giving a single, slow wag. I pulled open the freezer door. Behind a bag of frozen peas, I saw it. A dirty, worn leather collar, coiled up and frozen solid. Buster's name tag was still attached. The moment my fingers touched the frozen leather, the game ended. A low growl rumbled from the doorway, a sound that was not of this world. The creature knew it had been discovered. The illusion shattered. Its body began to contort, the golden fur melting away to reveal a pale, translucent skin. Its limbs elongated with sickening cracks and pops. Its jaw unhinged. The dog was gone, replaced by a tall skeletal horror of mismatched limbs and a face that was a swirling vortex of half-formed features. It shrieked, a sound of 1,000 stolen voices all screaming at once, and lunged. I fired the shotgun. The blast threw it backward, but it barely slowed down. I knew I couldn't kill it with bullets. I had to destroy the anchor. I grabbed the frozen collar and ran, the monster scrambling after me with insect-like speed. My goal was the fireplace. It slammed into me, knocking me to the ground just feet from my goal. I was pinned, its terrible face inches from mine, its breath like cold grave dirt. In that swirling mess of features, I saw my own eyes. With a final surge of adrenaline, I twisted my body and threw the collar with all my might. It landed perfectly in the hearth of the fireplace. I kicked the creature off me, scrambled to my feet, and hit the ignition switch. The gas jets roared to life, and the flames instantly engulfed the frozen leather. The monster let out a sound of pure, final agony. It arched its back, its entire body vibrating as the collar burned. It began to dissolve, not into blood and guts, but into a fine gray dust that smelled of ozone and rot. In seconds, it was gone, a pile of ash on the floor that slowly evaporated into nothing. Silence. It was over. A year has passed. I live in a different city now. I try to feel safe. I try to forget. But last week, a package arrived in the mail with no return address. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a single, brand new tennis ball. I almost smiled, but as I held it in my hand, I felt a familiar, unnatural coldness spread into my fingers, and under the faint chemical smell of new rubber, I could smell something else, the faint, unmistakable scent of golden retriever. If that story sent a chill down your spine, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next nightmare.